Nancy, alcoholic. And I would like to introduce to you a lifelong friend of mine since grade school, 6th grade. And that is Gary, who just got 45 years. So he got it young. Gary is in from Edina, Minnesota.
Wow.
Minnesota. Gary. All right, Gary.
Well, I guess it's old news, but I'm Gary, an alcoholic. And yep, we go back to 6th grade, and we've become pretty close friends since we had both become sober. So that's a lot of years, but still, no benefits, okay? Yeah. Good. I appreciate that. Well, I try and come to this potluck, as many years as I can because it is so much fun, seeing everyone. And then a few years ago, something happened, and somehow I got drafted to sell raffle tickets. And I wasn't too smart about it because I did a good job, which meant now I'm on the hook to do it every year, right? Smart would have been to, kind of do a poor job, right? But now I've got that. And last year when Brad asked me if I'd be interested in speaking this year, I'm thinking, hey, I'm getting a promotion, all right? And I find out I still have to sell raffle tickets. But no, of course, when he asked me if I'd be interested in speaking, being an alcoholic, kind of self-centered and egotistical and some of those wonderful traits, I thought, you want me to go up and talk about myself? This is right up my alley. I love doing that. No, I'm exaggerating a little. If I weren't, Nancy would be telling me I needed, a little more humility. And she wouldn't hesitate to tell me that either. So, at any rate, where I got sober, I just start with a couple things. Where I got sober was a club in Mankato, Minnesota. And it wasn't a real big club, but on every Saturday night, it would be an open meeting, and people would bring their families often, and once a month, they'd do a medallion night. So it was kind of a big occasion. So one of my first times there with my sponsor, we just come in and we're standing there, and up at the microphone is this guy. He's a big guy, and he's also a little bit heavy. He's got a face like W.C. Fields, red and kind of like this and craggy. And he says, "My name's Harvey. I'm an alcoholic, and I like it." I looked at my sponsor and said, "What do they do when someone comes in here and they're drunk?" He says, "That's Harvey. He's got 25 years." Oh, that's an eye-opener for me. So anyhow, and Harvey was a great guy. I started drinking in high school. And, I've been to a lot of meetings where people could tell you about their families and how dysfunctional they were and all kinds of things that, probably contributed to things. But, I can't say that. I can say that I came from a nice home, and I think I was just destined to be an alcoholic. And I consider myself lucky. Okay? Maybe I didn't do that on day one, but after having lived the program for some time, I am really happy that I'm part of this. It took me a while to realize it, but my brother and sister aren't alcoholic. They're the losers in the family. They don't get the program, So, at any rate, for many years, if people in my group or something wanted to hear my story, I'd say, boy, really started in college, where I joined a fraternity, etc. And then I got thinking, all of a sudden it dawned on me that one of my closest friends in high school, and a good friend of Nancy's also, and he's back there sitting next to her. He's the guy who's the tallest one in the room. I'm very good friends with him. He's not alcoholic, but he tries to understand when we tell him about blackouts and different things. You know, we kind of think he wishes he were one of us because he just can't comprehend some of this stuff. But anyhow, I got thinking back about this, and when I was 19, the year before I went off to college, because I took a year off, I went over to Ed's house one time, and he wasn't home, but he comes from a family of 10 children, and his mother is the absolute matriarch of matriarchs, woman that I just respect to the hilt. It's a good thing because she said, well, come on in here, sit down. They had this long table, you know, that could seat everyone for dinner. And she sat at the corner and she said to me, she said, Gary, I think you're an alcoholic and you need to go to AA. You know? Now, I wish she were still alive because I'd like to ask her again what made her say that, because I really didn't question it. And she said, I think you should go to AA. And then she told me where there was a meeting. Wow. Now, Ed told me today that she never shared that with him, you know, until I told him. And he thinks that, you know, his mother was very confidential. And 10 kids, I just don't think she liked Ed that much out of all of them. But you know what? I have her to thank for an awful lot because she planted the seed. So I went to that AA meeting, and they said some things that, you know, kind of hit home, but most of them were quite a bit older than me, and I realized right away that those weren't the kind of people I would want to hang around with. So I was certainly anything but ready. But, you know, I really do wonder what made her think that, because, you know, I don't remember being around there that much when we were drinking. But I do remember one occasion in particular. It was New Year's Eve, and, you know, with some restrictions, we were allowed to drink at Ed's house as long as we didn't do certain things like go off and drive. And so, consider Ed and I two of the musketeers. The third one, a guy named Tom, was there. And we decided, yeah, tonight we're really going to do it. So we started drinking shots. And we drink it, and then we say, do you remember this? Yeah, I remember it. And we said, well, we better have more. So we got going early. And then they had a large foyer, the Christmas tree, and I was out there talking to Ed's mom. And then all of a sudden, I just went over backwards, and I don't mean stumble. It was more like timber, and I caught myself, and then like the Christmas tree's right there. So like I'm doing everything to try not to hit the tree, and I brushed the side, and that was it. And then I just popped right up like nothing happened. And I don't know if maybe that stuck in her mind, you know. And there were some other things that went on. I remember when Ed got to take his dad's Cadillac one night. We were out driving around, and we got a bottle of vodka and put it under the seat. And then Ed kind of liked the power seat kind of concept. So he adjusted his, and we heard this pop. And all of a sudden, we realized what happened. And Ed was probably thinking, oh, my dad, you know. And I was thinking that for a minute. And then I thought, great, Ed, now what are we going to drink? You know, great. You know, and there were really two times in particular in high school that I remember. You know, I mean, I did a little bit of drinking. You know, I didn't think I was any different than anybody else, and I'd go to the parties. And before I got to those parties and stuff, there was one time early on where a couple of guys that I didn't even know very well, but they were troublemakers, like, you know, I kind of was at that time. They said, hey, we stole a car and we want to go joyriding, you know? You want to come with us? And we got beer and stuff. So I went with them, and we were riding around, and the last thing I remember was going down the street. I guess garbage day was the next day, and we went down the street and decided we should put all those, you know, the garbage cans and stuff. We thought if we put them in the street, it would be easier for the garbage collectors the next morning. And not a real good idea. And then the next thing I remember, which was about 4 hours later, I was walking home, and I was a couple blocks from home, and I kind of came out of this blackout daze. And I was walking by this house where I knew the kid my age named Tony Bellotti. And he saw me, and he came out, and he said, boy, you know, I'm going to walk you home the next couple blocks. So I don't remember much about it, but he did. Got me home. And the thing that was a little bit embarrassing about that was he had a broken leg and he was on crutches doing this. So I must not have looked like I was in real good shape. So then I did some of those parties, and a couple of times people told me afterwards, yeah, Charlie got caught by his parents. I said, oh, really? They said, yeah, you kicked over a beer bottle when you ran out the door. Okay, and this I really had no recollection of independently. But after they said it, I had some foggy recollection. Okay, and this happened to me a couple times. And then the the blackouts start happening, maybe not the mega blackouts, but portions of these evenings. And then I remember I had this young lady named Sue who came up to visit me, and I was taking her to the train actually on the to head home on Sunday, and she started talking to me about something that happened on the night before. And I said, huh? I'm like, what? And she thought I was playing dumb, and then she kept saying, well, no. And then all of a sudden she looked at me, she said, you really don't remember, do you? And I didn't. So I guess I got the blackouts going on pretty early. And those continued to get worse and worse. So I don't really remember abusing it that much. And at that point, there were some nights I could, have a few beers or whatever, and then, night's over and go home. Of course, things didn't exactly stay that way. No, it didn't. And I guess, it was about that time I decided to go off to college in Minnesota. And the first quarter, we had a girls' dorm here and a boys' dorm with a common eating area. So our floor got together with one of the women's floors and said we'd have a dance together. And I was not the kind of person who would want to get up and dance because I could embarrass myself. So I didn't want to try. But there was this one girl that I liked. And then I remembered in high school when I drank a little bit, one time my girlfriend was over and I just had a couple. And, I would never want to show emotion. I was real buttoned down, and of course I wouldn't ever want to show any imperfection. So I'd use a lot of energy trying to cover anything up that might be a flaw. But I had just a couple, and I let my guard down a little bit. And I remember her saying to me, she said, ooh, I like you like this. Talk about encouragement, huh? This is great. So anyhow, I get to this dance we have, and I decide, okay, I'm gonna drink some beer and stuff. And after I drank enough, I decided, okay, I will dance. And I was kind of self-conscious, but a couple hours later, by the end of the night, it was amazing. I was the best dancer on the floor. I might not have, I don't know if anyone else would have had, well, no, I know no one else would have had that opinion. So, but then I decided to join a fraternity, which is also really a drinking club, especially at my college. Pardon me?
Go Teak.
Yeah, you're right, go Teak. And at our college, the administration had nothing to do with the Greek system. We were on our own, so we could do anything. And there was no penalties. They didn't check our GPA, nothing. So it was just like a party house. And once I joined there, you know what? I found a place where, first time in my life, I really felt like I fit in. All right? I had a lot of friends in high school, and I could hang out with these guys, but I never really felt like I fit into those. I was always kind of a satellite circling. But now these guys, they like to drink and like to party. And so my first quarter in there, we have this, raft race, they call it, where, everybody throws together some kind of raft and, we go down the Minnesota River and, it's just a party day. And all the older guys in the fraternity, they're bringing 2 12-packs apiece. All right, and I'm feeling like, man, I must be a real lightweight, and I better step it up to keep up with these guys. And, I went gradually. I didn't just go to that. And so then there was more and more drinking. We had a beer machine in the basement, the kind where you bring the bottle down, put the coin in, because, that would work. So, the next morning we could all go down, and we had the bathrobe club where we'd come down in our bathrobe, turn on TV, start nursing the hangover with another beer and watch Happy Days. Pardon me?
The original.
Yes. Thanks, Joe. Speaking of drinking, no, so, then, it got going, and there's kind of a gang mentality that develops when you're with a bunch of guys. And, one of the first things we like to do is go down to the bars, and, now I'm in Minnesota, and surprise, I didn't know this, drinking age is 19. So now I can do it legally. That meant we can go to the bars. And our fraternity house, fortunately, was only 2 blocks from the bars. So it was easy to go down there. And early on, we just get a group together and maybe a couple of gals from the sorority, and we go down in a bunch and, happy hour and stuff. And, we'd start having some fun. And then, I don't know, after a couple hours, there'd be some of the people say, I got to get going and stuff and so on. And, we know we're going to be there for a long time. And then, some more say, I got to go back and study and that. And we're thinking, you little lightweight losers, what a bunch of sissy party poopers and stuff. We call those people? Social drinkers. I guess they kind of knew something we didn't. But no, I really think, when it comes to being an alcoholic, trying to figure out, I don't know how many of you did this, but I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, why I'm an alcoholic and stuff. And finally, when I realized it doesn't even matter. You know what? I'm an alcoholic. Okay, big deal. It is what it is, and now I can do what I want about it. I can stay sober or I can go drink. Right? So anyhow, we did some things that were maybe not so great when we were in the fraternity. We had some great ideas, like, let's go have what we call Casota night. There's a little bar up there in that small town. All the Greeks will go up there 10, 12 miles away, get roaring drunk, and then drive home 10 or 12 miles. Good idea, huh? All right, and then let's see. Somebody reminded me, they wanted me to tell this part of the story, which was, at the end of the night, we'd be, still revved up and not be ready to go home. So we would go, let's say, go out and get something to eat. And do you have a Embers or something like that around here, a Denny's kind of place? So we would go in there, and the place was actually called Sambo's back then. Yeah. And they had this big picture on the wall over there of a tiger. All right? So the guys, there's probably 8 of us there, and we're a little rowdy, and it's Halloween, and this guy and his girlfriend come in, and I mean, this guy looked pretty wimpy, and he's got a bow and arrow. I couldn't tell, but I think he was supposed to be, I don't know, a knight or something. But anyhow, I had a great idea. I thought, man, there's a tiger loose in here. I better borrow his bow and arrow so that I can shoot it. And we're on the far side of the room. Okay, so I tell my buddies I'm going to shoot it, and never mind that the last time I shot a bow and arrow, it had a suction cup on the end. Okay? So I let it go, and it goes about halfway across the room. And I mean, the room is full. And we didn't yell duck or anything like that. It just went over and starts going down, and all of a sudden we're like, and right then, there's a wooden chair with a guy sitting in it, so his back is towards us, and it goes down and sticks in the back of his chair. Now that was a close call, but we'd all been like, minute stuck in his chair. Oh God, did you see that? And we're right back at it. But then the other thing that would happen there is, see, I had this car, this little beater Corvair that I bought for $300, but it worked. So guess who would drive up to the Denny's, let's call it? I would. We pile 6 or 7 people in my Corvair with the bench seat. You know, the rowdier you got, the more of a hero you were in this crowd. So we'd drive up there, and, you know, part of it was through a little neighborhood. So I'd just, for kicks, decide, hey, I'm going to drive up and do the sidewalk on this block. So we'd do that, and, you know, ha, 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 and never caused any problems. But I got thinking later on, you know, what if there was a pedestrian for some reason out that time of night? And, you know, I probably wouldn't see them, and they might not believe they're seeing me. And just think what could have happened. I'll tell you what, even if nothing had happened, and I might have found a policeman, or he might have found me coming out somebody's sidewalk, how would you like try explaining that to the judge? I don't think I'd like to. There was one guy, actually, I was in a meeting not long ago, this is just an aside. He was talking about, this was in the prison, because I go in prison, help participate in the penitentiary, and this one guy said, yeah, I got extra time. He said, because I think the judge was pissed off at me because I stole the cop's car. He'd been stopped or something, whatever was going on, he jumped in the car and took off with it in the meantime. Not a good idea. So anyhow, things continued to happen, and you know, I'm hard pressed to think of all of them. And this is what I was a little bit afraid of tonight, is that there'd be some things I wanted to say that might slip my mind. You know, and you know, one of the things, and you don't hear guys talk about this much in mixed meetings, okay? But one of the things that almost all the guys are saying at men's meeting is, one of the things that we're pretty much ashamed of and regret is that we were so selfish since, you know, we were like, 19, 20, 21. You know, at that point in your life, you're kind of got big sex drive going. And so I'll just say it like this. And if this seems a little edgy, remember, this is not my original quote, but Sharon Stone said it. She said, women may be able to fake an orgasm, but men can fake the entire relationship. Right? And that kind of describes some of the ways we interacted. And, you know, it's a thing you'd like to make an amend for, but wasn't the kind of thing you really could. But I had one instance later on when I was in treatment, and I'll speak on that in a little bit. I was actually coming out of the treatment center, which was at a state hospital. This wasn't Betty Ford. And a girl I had dated, whenever it was convenient for me, pulled up in a car with 3 other girls from college and started walking up as I came walking out. And they were nursing students, and she was coming up there, and we ran into each other. And I'd been in there long enough that I want to apologize to her, and I did. And she was just so kind about it. And she said, I had no idea, you know, about this. And so, you know, I got to make like my first amend right there, and it went well. And it was a big relief. So that was a stroke of luck. But anyhow, you know, this drinking just kept getting worse, and the blackouts just kept getting worse. And I know a lot of summer nights, I'd drive home, and, you know, I had a lot, and I'd turn the car off in the back gravel parking lot of our teak house, and I'd just stick my feet out the window and sleep there, you know. And everyone got a big kick out of it in the morning when they'd see me out there. And, you know, this was a summertime event. It's Minnesota, okay? You know, it got to the point where the blackouts were long, you know. One day they had this Little Crow concert, you know, bands and stuff, and it was spring, one of the first nice days. And boy, I remember being out there, you know, drinking beer, and we actually smoking a little pot. And I don't know anything that happened from 2 o'clock that day until, you know, 11 o'clock the next morning. And I only found out after that because I was being told. That's dangerous stuff. Yeah. That's dangerous stuff. Now, Ed, I don't know if this was right, it was before college or not, but I remember also there was a party there in Bemis Woods, and we were, you know, big kegger and stuff. We'd been drinking. And I left, you know, whenever it was winding down, I left. And the next thing I know, I'm coming out of a blackout. And this is Chicagoland, you know, I mean, it's spread way out, right? I come out of this blackout, and I'm on a little 2-lane road. It's got to be farmland around here because there's hardly any lights. You know, I'm so far out of the city, I don't know where I am, but I know that there's one of those little country bridges coming up right ahead of me. You know, the kind where they have those little stone pillars and there's absolutely no wiggle room. Yeah. So I come out of the blackout, and I'm going at this. Well, I happen to be on the wrong side of the road, and I looked, and I'm going 100 miles an hour. So I took my foot off the gas. I was scared to actually hit the brake, and because there's no traffic out there at 3 a.m, you know, I was able to white knuckle it, you know, and just coast through there. And then a little bit later, I see a sign that says, I don't know where I'm, it says Marengo or Rockford, like 20 miles or something. So I've probably driven 50 miles and not known it. And so I made it through that bridge, though, didn't I? Rockford, 20 miles. Now, you know, it's like 3 a.m. My thought was this: my friend Tom lives in Rockford. So I turned and drove to Rockford without incident. And then, you know, by then it's 3:34, just knocked on the door. Tom, what are you doing? You know, and Tom actually did have a wife and a child at that point, so this was not, you know, a lot of wisdom either. And so, I know I'm forgetting some of the good stuff, but this is the part that I would not divulge to anyone for many years into my sobriety. And that is that, you know, this drink got worse, but I had a girlfriend that I met, and she drank and we partied, but we weren't like out of control, you know. I mean, the relationship was not solely based on drinking. But there was a night that we were at the teak house and we were the only ones there. And I don't know what the hell happened, but I came out of a blackout. And it might have been a wrestling match. She was on the floor and I was straddling her. I came out of this blackout. I was choking her. And I don't mean just playing around choking her. When I came out of it, I let go, and she was gasping for breath. I mean, it was serious. And like, with this terrified look, she jumped up and ran out of the house, just screaming like a mad woman. And like, you think that didn't scare the hell out of me? You know, there were two things. First, I almost killed somebody due to drinking in a blackout. You know, just think how different my life would be. All right? Today, I'm sure she would have called the police. Back then, didn't call the police. All right? But even at that point, you were doing time. All right? So actually, when I go and talk to the prisoners in state penitentiary, you know, it's not all just an AA meeting. There's another one where you can speak, and it's kind of open thing. You know, one of the first things I can tell them is, you know, guys, I'm not totally unlike you. You know, it was a different time. But I never found out, and I never will know what happened. Because, of course, she saw me. She's going the other way, and there was a look of absolute fear on her face. And the other part of this was, you know, I was in love with her. So there went that, too. So this was a real low spot. And, you know, it scared me. How could you do that? Because I got to tell you that, you know, as a sober person, I have never hit a woman. I've never threatened to hit a woman. I've never gotten in somebody's face to try and intimidate a woman. I mean, it goes against everything I believe. And yet, I did this. So I decided maybe it's time I get sober. Now, Ed's mom, of course, had talked to me about AA some time ago, so I knew about it. And I talked to our fraternity advisor, and he told me, well, you know, one of our alumni, Ivan, you know, he's alcoholic, and now he's an alcohol counselor. And Ivan's claim to fame was one time, he lived in a small town, one time, you know, he got arrested for something. He was a farmer, and when it was time to go to court, he drove his tractor up the front steps of the courthouse. And I think he got in more trouble. But anyhow, he put me in touch with Ivan. And then, Ivan schooled me a little bit. And then I went to an AA meeting in Mankato. And at the first AA meeting in their club, there'd be, 2 or 3 of them that would take you aside and, go over. They had a little room over here because we had a little building. And they'd give you what they called a lesson. And so really nice people, and they'd go through the steps with me. And so they start the steps, and in no time, the word God came up. And then it came up again and again. And my experience with religion had not been good. And every girlfriend I ever dated always tried to get me to go to church with them and stuff. And then this one girl, Mary, the last one, there's this big movie event down at, McCormick Place, and you want to go and all that stuff. So I go down there, and it's a Christian thing. And at the end, they want you to come up on stage. And, it's like now sure enough, it's another Christian program. They're trying to get me going in. And you know what? I always believed in God. That was no problem. But I didn't have a relationship. So this is what I got to do. And, they go through these steps, and I listened and everything. And by the end, I just looked at him and I said, this will never work. But I followed that, said, I'm going to treatment. Well, it turned out that the only treatment that my parents' insurance would cover had to be in a hospital setting. Okay, so about 12 miles down the road from Mankato was St. Peter State Hospital. They had the chemical dependency building, and then they had the building for people who really had some mental illness, and then they had some people that were more severe, and it went on up till they had the security prison for the criminally insane. So this is my campus now. And for meals, we would go across into that other building and share the lunchroom. And there was some strange behavior going on over there. And their group would line up from one side, and our group would line up from the other, waiting for them to open the doors. One of my friends was there, and he said, the first guy in their line, he said, hey, you want to smoke? And the guy looked at him and said, earthworms don't smoke. And he went down on the floor and started wiggling. So, this is the kind of environment. But it was a 28-day thing. And in fact, I had to wait 3 days to get in there, and I did not drink for those 3 days. And that reminds me, I did omit something. The drinking got to the point where I never knew what was going to happen now when I drank. So this girl that I almost choked to death, all right, we got to the point where I was going to go meet her family. And it was a wedding, and then they have the big wedding dance out at, I don't know how. It's kind of a club with the big dance floor, and you bring your own beer, and there's setups and stuff. But anyhow, I knew that I don't dare drink because God knows what's going to happen, and this is in front of her family. So I stood over to the side all night in absolute knots. Oh, it was miserable, and that was just one of the experiences that probably helped me get to the treatment center. And I didn't drink for about 3 days before that, and so I wasn't in real great shape. And I drove myself there, and it was February, I think, and some of the snow had melted, so it was dirty snow, and the trees were barren, and it was kind of foggy. It was kind of a dismal-looking day. And on my way there, I was debating whether I should keep driving or drive myself into a tree. Obviously, the treatment center won by a 51-49 margin. And I got there, and they check you out medically. And I guess my blood pressure was so low, they kept insisting that I was on some kind of downers or something, and I wasn't. But, I got healthy, and then I realized as I started the program that except for about 3 of us, the other 30-some were all committed by the courts. And there weren't very many of them that wanted to get sober or wanted to take it seriously. I didn't like that because I was genuine. And then, so I went to my counselor one day, and I said to him, I kind of complained. I said, these, people are doing this and that. And he told me something that stuck with me. He said, you just have to think of it this way. They are less fortunate than you because they're not at your place yet. And hopefully they will get there. And that really helped me accept others who are still practicing. But anyhow, treatment proceeded, and but I didn't really like the fact that I was in there, and there was still a big stigma really on alcoholism. And then one day, oh, this was great. One day we got to have an outing. Okay? So those of us who wanted to go, they loaded about 5 of us up into the white state hospital van and drove us to the bowling alley. All I could think of was the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where they took the van out. I don't remember if that happened at the time, but afterwards, I just matched the two up and think about it. But anyhow, I completed treatment with, a couple things happened though. Our fraternity house was across the street from a Catholic church. And we actually befriended the pastor there, and he'd come over, and Father Woody. So, I'm supposed to admit things to another human being, I don't want to admit my stuff to another human being, but I can get Father Woody. This'll work. So Father Woody came up, and we did that, and it went okay. And I didn't tell him about choking anybody, I'll say that. Like I said, I kept that a secret from everybody for many, many years. And I mean 20, 25 years, something like that, before I came clean. And when I said it in my group, it was a big relief. It's also the last time we had any women come to our meetings, but I was actually a little bit scared of that. But it didn't happen. They don't make judgments. But at any rate, I wanted to get sober, so I decided I'm going to go to the AA meetings. And, at first, for some of you newer people, at first it was like, oh, I got to go to it. I got to go to this, And actually over time it was like, oh, I should go to a meeting, take it or leave it kind of thing. And then eventually get to the point where I want to go to a meeting. Okay? Now, I've got quite a bit of sobriety, but I still go to my meeting every Friday night. And I could tell you, I don't really need that to stay sober at this point, but I go because it helps me stay on even keel, which it does, and I've got friends that I like to see, close relationships, but you know what? I don't know if that'd be true or not, because I still go to meetings. So I don't know what would happen if I didn't. But I'm not going to find out, and really, it's fun to go see my friends, and you talk about the fellowship, something that I didn't comprehend at first. But now we go down there, we go out and have dinner, and, it's a social occasion as well. And so I still like going. But anyhow, I got out of there, and I still lived in the fraternity house. So, and there were a lot of going-ons there. But I decided, I knew, of course, like some of you probably think, I was a special alcoholic, I could just kind of do it my way, and it'll work. And, it actually did. For 3 months or so, because I got a 3-month medallion, it's one of many. But after that, kind of same things happened. And what was going on was, I want to stay sober, but I'm not having any fun now. I don't know how to have any fun. I'm like a fish out of water. All right? I know where the fun was being had. So I would stay away from that. So I decided that when the house would throw a kegger, and we have big ones, I thought, okay, I'm going to go and socialize, but I'm not going to drink. Well, that wasn't the best plan either. So I modified it. I decided I'll go to these. I'll drink ginger ale. I'll put that in my glass so no one's going to bug me about why aren't you drinking, okay? And then when the crowd starts pulling away, and getting silly, I'll leave. And, that was not a bad plan, and it worked for a little while. Okay, and then, I decided to try and have some fun. And these relapses were not long, because I might try for a couple weeks and now I'm screwed because I can't have any fun drinking either. They say AA ruins it, and it did, more or less. But when I did these relapses, it's not like I went out and drank myself into a mega blackout, but, because on the way there, I realized I'm not having fun, this ain't working. So I'd go back to AA again and show up at the club. And of course, no one judged you. They just welcomed you back again. And so now this time I decide, maybe I ought to move out of that fraternity house. That'd probably be a good idea. So I moved to an apartment and I stayed sober. Went to some AA meetings and then wasn't having a whole lot of fun. So I thought I'd try it again. And, it didn't work. And so after a short time, I'm back at a meeting. Not liking it, so, and I've got like 4 3-month medallions by now. And, but my best drinking buddy, Tom, is going to come up to Mankato over Thanksgiving weekend. And when I drank with Tom, we had fun, so I'm getting revved up for this, So he gets there, and we go out on Thursday night, and, well, no, Thursday, I think we went out to somebody's house. That's Thanksgiving. But Friday night we go out to the Horny Bull, the bar, where we could have some fun. And a good friend named Sherry was with us. And, I was drinking, so was he. And you know what? It was just blah, flat as could be. How disappointing, huh? So then we go back on Saturday night, and, I said, I just don't feel like drinking tonight. And that's the last time I drank. Wow. I finally surrendered. And I don't know if I surrendered 100% right then, honestly. But I went back to meetings. And, everybody in those meetings were quite a bit older than I was, They're probably the age I am now. But they were much older than I was. And so it was hard to really feel like you fit in. But I'd sit at the table with them all. But afterwards, people would go and, I'm just kind of like that and be gone pretty soon. But one night we had this open meeting, and I'm standing there afterwards, and this fella comes up to me. His name was George, and he said, you look like you could use a friend. Well, how insulting. Come on, I don't need a friend. I got plenty of friends. No, I think God must have been with me, because I said to him, well, I kind of do. What? Slap my face. But he became my sponsor. And if it weren't for him, I don't know that I would have gotten through the next 6 months or whatever it was, because, he took me under his wing, and he got me involved a little bit in the fellowship. Now, part of this was good, because we'd go upstairs and we'd play cards afterwards, called a game called Pfeffer, where you played with partners. And that was fun. But once in a while, they'd go out afterwards and go have coffee at the Little Wagon Wheel Cafe, which was about a block from the bars. All right, so I'm in there. There's, about six of these people who could drop dead at any moment. And now I'm sitting there, and they're having coffee, and I'm just thinking, what have I done to myself? What have I done, Gary? But I stuck with it, and then he'd ask me, hey, why don't you come out to the house and, we'll grill some stuff out and so on. And then there'd be a football game. Why don't you come over and we'll watch the game and so on. And, that really helped. And socially, like I said, I was like a fish out of water. I did not know how to behave without alcohol. I mean, those drinking days, before we'd go to the bars, the joke was, we better have a couple to put our personalities on before we go down there. And it was kind of true. So, but what I ended up doing was, actually got into dating a little bit. Might ask somebody to go to a movie, and I was trying to fill the time, and then I decided, I always loved playing softball, so I got playing softball and eventually started, building back a life. Another thing in college, because I'm supposed to mention some of these things. In summer school, we had a plan, okay? It was go to class in the morning, Then in the afternoon, we all congregate at this one pool we designate which apartment complex. And we, probably drink a couple beers, lay up on the pool sun. And then for me, it was like 5 o'clock. I had a part-time job. So then I'd go to work, and work until I think 10. And then after that, we'd go out to the bars or the parties, But then the next day, we'd do the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. So actually, I got back up because before George took me under his wing, now the thing I was going to say just left my mind again. Oh yeah, this is a good part. Okay, after that last relapse, I decided, okay, that thing they say in the book about half measures availed us nothing. I decided, okay, I'll go in whole hog. So I decided I better quit my job at the liquor store. because being a special alcoholic, I could keep my job and still pull this off. But anyhow, so got going with the club. And like I said, getting involved in that fellowship. And then, the part about sobriety took a little while to ease into it, but what a great way of life. I became a good person again. They say, tell what you were like, what happened, and what you are like now. And, aside from all that drinking stuff, I had a brother and a sister and, parents and that. And of course, I wasn't around them when I was drinking because they were back in Chicago. But would I remember their birthdays? No. Would I remember Mother's or Father's Day? Well, if I did, it was a phone call because I sure as hell didn't think about it ahead of time and be able to send a card. My sister asked me to be godfather for her second son, and I said, sure. She said, I want you to take this seriously and everything, So a couple years ago, I apologized to her for not having done a damn thing, And it wasn't that I chose not to do these things. It's like I'm in my own world. I didn't even think about these. So in hindsight, man, I was so self-centered, manipulative, and self-serving, the thing is, I didn't even know it. Didn't even know it until we got this inventory thing going, and I really did a thorough, searching, and fearless moral inventory. But I've heard some fun things from AA people, some good things too, but one of the funniest I heard was right here at one of the previous potlucks. One woman was saying, she said, for me, before sobriety, I only used to do two things, drink and have sex, and I was good at both of them. And that, kind of sticks with you. But some of the, this serenity prayer, now, because I know there's some newer people here too. There are a lot of people in this program, including me, that had real problem latching onto that higher power right away and used their group as their higher power. And I did that. I did it for quite a while. And over time, that's changed a little bit. And of course, the rest of that I'm not remembering right now to tell you. Maybe it'll come back to me. Where should I go from here? Some of the things I heard in my group, there's one guy who says this, says, okay, if you're an alcoholic, one of three things are going to happen to you. You're either going to sober up, get locked up, or get covered up. Those are your three options. So, of course, when I told the inmates that, I said, you guys are 1 for 3 already. And you can get some more, though, and, up, down, whatever way. So I remember that. Another fellow in our group told me, and these are just things that really helped me in life. He said, you know what? Before you open your mouth about something, 3 things you should think about. Does something need to be said? And does something need to be said now? And does that something need to be said by me? You adopt that and things get easier. One of the promises I like best and has served me the best is have patience. The answers will come. All right. Now, even though I was being a drunk, I was also, kind of an achiever anyhow. And, I always wanted to get things done and so on. But I learned with this that if I just sat back, so many times I could just say to myself, well, I'm just going to like sleep on this and see how things unfold. And there was a lot of times I didn't have to do anything because things just kind of worked themselves out. And, I've ended up with the feeling in my life, I don't really have to worry about what happens because I always figure in the end that my higher power, God, will take care of me. And it's something that's, that's taken time for me to come. But I was married to a woman, and when we were married, I inherited her daughter, and I had 3 children from a previous marriage, which reminds me, one of the things they tell you when you get sober is do not make any big decisions for, I think, 2 years. Have you ever heard that? Okay, well, I got married about 6 months after getting sober, because I was special, of course. And you know what? The gal I married, great heart, but what I liked was she helped me have fun. She helped me let my hair hang down. So I had fun. I failed to think about this, even for a nanosecond, about what kind of life partner she might make. Seems like I missed something in here, that you ought to think about. So after 7 years, we did end up divorced, and not an ugly one. In fact, we're very, very good friends today, and we've always done things together with the kids, and it's really been great. And in fact, when I have to be, she lives in Rochester, I live in Minneapolis, and I've had to go down to the Mayo Clinic down there. When I stay overnight, stay at her house. It's just fine. So that's good. But then after being single for, about 5 years or so, I met another woman, and we ended up getting married, which was good. And then one day, out of the blue, she got up out of bed in the morning and said, I don't really know if I feel like being married anymore. Oh, okay. Let me go brush my teeth. And then she said, well, I'm just such a malcontent. Okay. Well, a couple months went by and stuff, and she decided she was leaving. And I did find out that when we got together, I suspected that it was one of those things where she found somebody first before she let go of the last thing. And there's a saying that if they'll do it for you, they'll do it to you. And so that's kind of what happened. And, I wasn't happy about it because, she'd leave with Tracy, and then I was there with my 2 children, because they'd come to live with us rather than their mom. And actually it turned out great. But, it was a whole hell of a lot easier getting dumped than it was having to agonize for years over a decision about whether you were going to leave or not. But I wasn't happy. And, affairs of the heart can be pretty wrenching, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know, oh my God, I'm not going to sleep. This is going to be awful. And I'm certainly not going to be sleeping in my own bedroom. So I go in the other room, and, I just dread this. And I start saying that serenity prayer repeatedly. And by God, I fell asleep within about 10 minutes and slept like a baby. And that really left an impression with me. Really did. Now, there's, in my life, and by the way, to get that higher power thing going, one of the things I did when they talked about prayer and meditation, and I loved it because one time at our meeting, a person read prayer and medication. And all of a sudden I thought, that'd be great, but prayer and meditation. And so the way I handled it was I just prayed for more faith. That's about the best I could do. I could just pray for more faith. And I was content with that. And so now I'm going to, before I do that, I want to read something that my daughter wrote. And she put this right on Facebook. And she was probably almost 40 years old when she did this. She wrote, wow, today is the 2-year mark of my sobriety. Last year at this time, I was weighing the idea of posting about my 1-year mark and putting myself out there so publicly. I was worried about the assumptions people would make, the judgments that would be placed on me, and of being excluded or deemed not fun. Thankfully, I am not so worried about that anymore. I know that eliminating alcohol has exponentially improved my life. I no longer feel like I'm unlucky because I can't drink like others. I feel lucky to have found this way of life and all the blessings that come with it. So today, I am sharing this post only to mark this milestone, not only to mark this milestone, but also for all of the people in my friends and followers circle who may be silently questioning their relationship with alcohol and wondering what it might be like to live without it. It's worth it, I promise. So obviously, I was very pleased about that. You know, one of the reasons I wanted to read that to you is that, I was sober before my kids were born. And the downside is they can't properly appreciate my sobriety, of course. But, she knew all about AA all along. And, at that Mankato club, when you did have the medallion night, people's families would be there. And, the husband or the wife or somebody from their family would come up and say, congratulations, it's made such a difference in our life and so on. And she came and did that for me when she was 12 years old. But there was one time when she was in college that she called me and, she was at some party and she was out on the curb and she couldn't find her car and, Dad, so I go and I get her and we look all over for her damn car. And finally we say, I gotta take you home. So we take home and there's her car sitting at her house. And she had a couple of other occasions, just a couple. And I told her, Carissa, I said, the only time you ever get in trouble is times you've been drinking. So, you might be careful. And that's all I've ever said to her about drinking. Because sometimes you say something and it backfires. All right? But
most of the time.
Yeah, thank you. So I didn't say anything. And you wonder, gosh, am I doing enough 12-step work? Well, you know what? Just being an example and going public really is 12-step work. Coming to the meeting is 12-step work. And right there, it was great, because I'm real proud of her. And you know what? She has a great job, and it wasn't impacted. I couldn't drink during the week, Dad, because of my job. But, I could hardly wait for the weekends, And then she didn't get in any trouble with her husband, the law, anything. But what she told me was, Dad, I'd wake up Sunday morning, and I'd just be this crabby bitch of a mom. Loser. She can't steer. No, she gave me a whack in the back, if you didn't see that. But she just said she'd get up, she'd be a crabby mom in the morning, and she'd have to worry all day long about, God, what did I do last night? What did I say to who and all that stuff? And she'd finally had enough of it. So she just quit, started going to AA, and she's been good ever since. So, that's pretty powerful about just being out there. So, you don't know how many other people you have affected that way, right? But I would imagine for those of you who have been public, I'll bet you get phone calls from friends and other people who say, hey, somebody here, somebody there, could you talk to my this or that, or what should I do, and so on, and you end up taking them to a meeting or something. But the part that I want to start wrapping up with is, and there's a reason I'm going to tell you this, I've had quite a few times in my life that I could have died or been killed, all right? And not all due to drinking. When I was 2 years old, I almost choked to death on an apple core, spent a night in the hospital because I didn't turn blue and all that. That was close. And when I was a child, there were railroad tracks by our house where we used to play. And we knew about being careful around trains. But one day, 3 tracks, the one train clears, so we go to cross. And I looked out, by God, there is a train right there. I had to dive to avoid getting hit. But I mean, oh my God, it was scary. But I've always liked trains, so I did get a job working for the railroad during one summer, working in the rail yard, riding on the side of cars, giving signals, throwing switches and stuff. Well, the first day out there, we all know that railroad tracks, you can tell when a train hasn't been over them. There's all grass and they've been abandoned, right? Not so in a railroad yard. So on the first day, I see one, and I walk out on it, and the guy's backing the train in. And Switchman was on the back, and if he hadn't yelled at me, I would have got hit on my first day on the job. You know, and by doing a real stupid thing. You know, and then there was another time in the rail yard where, you know, a guy I knew, he was working a different crew, and we kind of ended up in the same spot. So he said, hey, I got a joint. So, you know, it's a good idea to smoke a joint at that point, working in the yard. So then we're hanging around there, and I didn't realize it, but he was backing a train in to couple to this next car, and I'm oblivious to it, you know. And then he says, hey, you know, watch out, you know, I'm bringing the train in there, you know. So if he hadn't said anything, you know, I probably wouldn't be talking to you tonight. I had another time, boy, and a lot of train times. There was this crossing near a house that was gravel and kind of uphill, 3 tracks, unmarked crossing, and, you know, a lot of brush and stuff grown up really high. So this one kid, he takes his dad's car out. I didn't know him very well, but me and another guy went joyriding with him. And we're going down that gravel road, and we had just learned that he couldn't drive very well because we whipped around a corner, leveled a stop sign, and then he gained control. We're going toward the railroad tracks. And now I've got a little experience with these tracks, so I'm looking, and there is a train coming. There is a headlight. And I start yelling. I'm in the back seat, train, train, train. You know, and thank God. He got stopped, but the bumper was right up to the first track. And if I hadn't yelled, who knows? Right? Then this time it was in college, but hadn't been drinking. Friend and I were driving out to Montana from Minnesota. So he had a Pinto station wagon, so, you know, we take turns driving, and then you sleep in the back. So now it's my turn to sleep in the back. I climb back there, and I'm just getting settled on my sleeping bag, and I put my, you know, the driver's seat is back here, and then this is South Dakota. There's no cars, you know, we haven't seen headlights for ages. And then all of a sudden, we see some real bright headlights back there coming pretty fast. So I'm up on my elbows looking at them, and right when they got to us, they drifted over into our lane and hit the back of the car, you know, at an angle, which threw us into bad fishtailing, okay? And I can remember every bit of this perfectly. First time, I boom against the back of the driver's seat. Then we swerve, turn a perfect 90 degrees, hit the side. Next swerve, turn another 90 degrees and hit the back. And the tailgate had been popped by the impact. So I start sliding out, you know, and my head's hanging back there, and pretty soon, you know, there's the bumper here with headlights on it, and they stopped at the time. But I'm hanging out, trying not to fall out of this vehicle, because, I mean, we're going full speed on the interstate. But I slid right out onto the concrete, and I happened to land in such a way that I immediately did perfect somersaults. I mean, my wrist took a beating, but I did perfect somersaults across the next lane, over the shoulder, through the grass, and into the fence. And so I went to the emergency room because my wrists were giant, and I had scrapes and stuff. I didn't bang my head. I didn't break a bone. It was like a miracle. The guy in the ER said, you should be dead. You know, you should be dead. I said, well, you know, I'm not. That's, you know, I'm feeling pretty lucky. At that point in my life, I'm not thinking blessed, but I'm thinking lucky, okay? You know, when I was drinking, at a you know, like 20 years old or something, I had my tonsils out, okay? And usually that's done a little bit earlier, okay? A little bit earlier. All right. Okay, so I go out and get drunk a couple days afterwards, and I guess I puked before I came in the house, and I went to bed, right? So my mom comes in and wakes me up the next morning, because God knows I'm sleeping late. Oh, there's blood all over the place because I ripped my stitches out, all right? Now, you've heard of people choking on their vomit, right, and dying? I sleep on my stomach. So I didn't have to gurgle on my own blood or anything. And fortunately, you know, there was no further repercussion, you know. And actually, there are probably a couple more. But the reason I'm telling you this is because, and I finally realized, could all these things just be coincidence and luck? When I got divorced the first time, my mom said something to me. She said, boy, you've sure had a tough time, with alcohol and now this. And I said, Mom, I think I've had a great life, And she says, well, the Lord must have a special purpose in mind for you. And, I remember saying it, but didn't really register. But now, in hindsight, I believe in the higher power, right? I think my higher power was with me from the start, long before I knew it. And so now I have a higher power, and I can't tell you why I was a practicing alcoholic who found my way to AA. I can't tell you why I'm one of the alcoholics who somehow has a long-term continuous sobriety. Okay, and when somebody says, wow, 45 years, how you do it? I'll give you the short version. God just gave me whatever it was I needed to allow this to happen. And so I'm gonna read you one short thing, and we'll call it a night. And I hope it's been a good night for everybody. But I just, people post things on the internet, all these little sayings, and I ran across this, so I said, I'm bringing it. It says, it's not what I have been through in my life that defines who I am. It's how I got through it that has made me the person I am today. I thought that was cool. So anyhow, thank you very much.